I guess the transcripts still stay up there. Yes, I did say, let's get this baby recording. Hey everyone, this is Professor G. I am here with you on this lovely Saturday night at 8:30 in the evening. And the reason for that is that I've finished going over your drafts for your essays, if you've gotten them turned in. And I wanted to, first of all, we're going to do just a little bit of an experiment. I will try to slow down in talking. And that experiment is going to be with me using ChatGPT to tell you what not to do for your essay. It's an experiment because I haven't tried it out yet, which is a no-no for teachers in the classroom, but I'm not in the classroom. I'm taking a video, so I could always just wipe out whatever I wanted to before that point if I mess up or if it doesn't work out. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to go over basically the main comments that I give on these drafts, and they're very standard things that you should be learning in college that you probably should have already learned, but that's okay. We're here now. So, and this is our push towards this kind of analytical thinking that you want to take forward with you in your writing, not just in your head. Okay. One of the classes, we're going to look at the essay that you're working on, and I'm going to go through this process step by step with an example essay. And I'll show you some neat tricks, hopefully, as we go along that will help you. But mostly what I want to see you do is I want to see you go back and take the comments that I've given you and look at this video and how to put these things into process. A lot of the things that I'll go over. And go ahead and do that to your essay. So there's a reason that I set that deadline so early in the semester. You might have been like, why is this professor insisting on the final paper before Thanksgiving break? Like everybody plans on having Thanksgiving break to write, right? Or at least the night before the end of Thanksgiving break. So, I figured that some of you might have been wondering that, but I put it on the other side, but the beginning of Thanksgiving break, so that when you come back from Thanksgiving break, you've got the solid piece to help you move forward to actually get an essay that could bring an A for you in this class. And that could actually help you get the skills that you need to take your writing up that extra level from wherever it is now to the next level that it would be. And you could use these kinds of things over and over and over again with your writing, practicing them. If you practice them daily, they will become very much habitual. And that's why it's easier for professors to do it more quickly. And also why, you come in with certain skill sets now, like being able to pull a quote out of a piece that you're reading and putting it into your essay. So with that being said, let's get right to it. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to share my screen with you for one of my Comp 2 classes. Give me a second. Oh, there it is. Bright green. That's the problem with it. It was in bright green, and the rest of them were white. So I was like, I'm going to look through all these white ones first, and then I'll check out that green one and see what that is. But anyway, without further ado, so we are in my living room. We are also in my browser. You're in a hybrid space, so that's kind of pretty cool in and of itself. I'm a real nerd, as you can tell. Okay, so we're going down here and we want to look and see kind of what we've done so far. So you've done this adaptation analysis research project. This is kind of like an annotated bibliography that you've completed where you come in and you say, I'm looking at this particular topic. I'm looking disasterology. And I picked this topic because both of these books, both of these films deal with disasters on different levels, personal to global, quite a wide range that I'm giving you there. So hopefully you found some research that deals with disasterologies that you can then bring into this project, because the thing that I don't want you to do, and that's why I don't assign certain pieces of literature, but others, is I don't want you to just go in and find research based on what other people have written about the book or movie that you're looking for. So this is really a research paper. And to wrap your head around what you're doing for this paper is to realize that it is at its primary, at its base, a research paper We're just looking at researching a situation inside a book or a film or both, where we ask, like, what if this hypothetical situation, you know, were real? What is its importance to its readers? Why is this author writing about this? Why do we find it interesting? What are these characters? Who do they look like in our society? Who do they represent? You can really break this down. And I hope that you have had the opportunity in high school to take a class where you do a close reading of a text, because a lot of what we do in our essay, as we're pulling in quotes from the literature, we're using a close reading analysis, and we're blending that with real, research from the real world. And we're looking to see what happens when we put this situation with this society at this particular juncture in time, and what is it saying at that particular juncture in time. So it would be the same as if I said, go out and research all the cases of domestic violence that have taken place in either Orange, Seminole, Lake, or Volusia County, any of those counties, and determine how well that county is doing in terms of handling its domestic violence cases. Right. So that's like something that you can go out and actually research. Well, this is something that you can actually research too. But instead of saying, hey, this is a case here that happened in the real world, we're looking at the cases of things happening in your novels and your films. So this is a really good mental space to make sure that your head is in as you're going into the final draft of this essay. What have you done so far toward this essay? Well, you've done some research, and you're going to take that research, hopefully, and use some of that in your essay. I don't know if it is appropriate to your essay at this point. That may have changed, but it's still the same kind of process that you would go through to find a source if you're still in need of sources. I would say about half of all my students are still in need of sources for this essay. Then you can come down and you can also look at the kinds of things that we looked at in terms of sources, how to get into all the things that I'm checking for, and that you'll see these things listed in that draft there. So how well are you paraphrasing things? How well are you quoting things? Are you introducing your quotes and explaining them, and so on and so forth? So make sure that you've kind of gone back through to see that you go back and look at these things will help you make sure that you've actually put in all the ideas that you might want to put into this essay. Because, I can write something a month ago, and then, today, if I sat down to write the same paragraph, it's not going to be the same paragraph. And maybe I will have forgotten something that I could have included from that previous piece of work that would have made my life easier. So, as you're doing this, as you're working through the revision of this essay, you're putting a practice into place for yourself later in classes, but you're also putting into place a method of doing research. And that is something that's really, really, really important as you go forward in your college classes. I typically put in the comments the place to go and find the types of sources that are required for this assignment. But if you find yourself searching for that, I can certainly point you into that direction. I want to kind of bring you back to this point because I want to pick something that is not Perks of Being a Wallflower or white noise, because I don't want to kind of step on anybody's toes in doing the research. But I really am we're going to walk through a sample that will be both a way of learning how to not use ChatGPT to do your work, but also a way of figuring out how to change your ideas to represent the kind of ideas that the kind of depths that you want to get to in this project. But maybe, you don't have that kind of experience with literature, and it's a little bit more scary. Okay, and so this is going to be kind of a blend of information for my Comp 2 class and my Comp 1 class. This is what I decided to put in here just to see what this comes up with. I'm curious to see if ChatGPT is going to actually write the whole essay for me. All right, so what I asked it to do was I asked it to basically come up with a comprehensive essay on the first season of a podcast that I really like listening to called Something Was Wrong. And so I was using this example earlier, like we can go out and we can go to each county, for instance, that surrounds us, and we can look at domestic violence and see kind of how it's being handled. That's like in the field research, right? But when we go and we look at a text like a film or a novel or something like that, maybe we're looking at something that's real world, because in this case, this is supposed to be real world characters. But at the same time, we may be looking at something fictionalized. So I wanted to use this as it represents the theme that we're looking at. And it kind of just gives us an idea of how to go about this. Pretty specifically, a method of writing this essay. I wonder what would happen if I ask it to write it. There we go. Now it's doing it. Okay, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this essay that ChatGPT wrote for me, and I'm going to open up a document. This would be a good place for a second monitor. It would be very handy to have one here, but I don't. So, okay, and so I'm going to put this essay in here, and I'm going to go through some of the things that I went over with anybody basically who had issues like these in their essay, and I'm just going to try to hit them all to give you an idea. So the first thing that I would be looking for in this class is for you to be really speaking to the topic. So we started off with a topic that was disasterology. That might have changed for you as you're going forward, but we still want to come up with an overall topic. The reason that we want to do this, and this is, so there are different places require different kinds of writing. In the field of English and composition and essay writing, we want like a more global understanding that surrounds the smaller thing that we're looking at. So we want to always have that context in there. So normally, if you're back in the old days of Comp 1 and Comp 2, we would talk about audience and context a whole lot more than we do today, because a lot of times today we're talking about possibly things that students used to learn in high school. I don't know. But anyway, I digress. So the first thing that I'm going to see here is that this starts off first and foremost about something was wrong. So the one of the comments that I give students is, let's put some of these comments over here so that you guys can see them later if I can get this to pop up. So one of the comments that I'm going to give is broad to narrow, and it tells you about how to work from the bigger topic that you're looking at and move down toward the specific example that you're looking at. This is really, really important in a research essay, because if I'm to uncover whether or not a particular case of domestic violence, that's because that's what I'm using as my topic here, is kind of in the background. If I want to look at an individual case, in order to say anything about that case, I have to compare it to everything else around it, right? If I'm a real thorough researcher, now obviously this is a 5-page, roughly 5-page essay, you're not going to be doing that. I want to kind of bring that in. So we could take this a couple of different ways. I probably would not go the way of talking about this podcast as a true crime podcast among other true crime podcasts, but you could if your audience were something like, a journal that dealt with the development of podcast, or maybe in a program if you're writing like a master's thesis on on something like that. So you could situate it that way. And it would be a unique, interesting way to do it. I'm not saying that I wouldn't because of that. I'm just saying I wouldn't because that's just not normally where I go. So that's the other thing that you think about is you're the author, you're coming from your own perspective. So the easiest thing for you to do is write what you know. So write what you know. If you're in the medical field, it would be a great idea to take something like this and write what you know about it, write the medical side of it. If you're going into more of an engineering field, you maybe look at it from that way. Or if you're going into like digital media production, you could look at it from that perspective. It's all relative to what you're interested in. But when you go with what you know, it just gives you a lot more authority. So I'm going to go with what I know here, which is to set the context in the socioeconomic context. So I really want to focus on the disaster of entrapment. All right. And that's going to be my topic. So I would start with something like coercive control is not something that we talk about often. Okay, coercive control is not something that people talk about often in society, but it's important to have that kind of discussion. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is narrow it down a step. So for me, I think I'm going to go with what is it that I want to discuss? So I'm going to say, I don't really want to use the word torture, but cruelty. Okay, and so my next sentence is a really important discussion that needs to be had in society is the discussion of manipulation and other cruel practices that lead to entrapment. Okay, now I've got something set up here and I've got a perfect place to bridge to the specific. So I'm going to start honing in, on that. So some of those practices which are documented by many types of media. So like I'm moving towards what I'm talking about, but not getting there yet. Okay. So now I'm looking at this and now I can see that this meets the standard of this class. Now, could ChatGPT write an essay? Well, we've just seen that it can. But at the same time, you've got to ask yourself, really, this is going to become so much more important in today's society. Why, what is the writing purpose and what am I being asked to do? Okay, so now for this class, you should know, and if you didn't know beforehand, you do know after getting comments back on your essay that, well, one, that the whole of something goes in italics. So this is a whole podcast. Within it are episodes. So I'm going to put that in there. But you should also know that one of the things that I say deals with the kind of thesis that I'm expecting you to have. So I really want you to have a thesis that says the book, the movie, the whichever or both that you're working with does something. Does it teach? Does it mock? Does it, it could do all kinds of things. We could say, like perks of being a wallflower, even in its seriousness, like mocks a certain, you know, cultural group in school, and maybe more than just one, right? Because it's looking at people and segmenting them in that way. It has to do that in order to function as the movie. But, we could say that and have an argument about that, or, we don't call it an argument in real life, we call it a discussion. But in college composition and in these papers that you'll write for other classes, you're kind of, it's like, I want to engage in this discussion in my essay with my professor the way that I would if I were sitting down in front of this person. I want to sound smart and intelligent and be able to get on their level. And so this is what you do in that kind of situation. You make an argument about the thing, whatever it is, and how you're interpreting it. So let's take this and put this in the real world, and I'll go back to like the medical side. Well, on the medical side, an example of this would be, I argue that a particular kind of needle is better, the butterfly needle is better than another needle for this particular function. Those are like discussions that you have in the field. So that's kind of why I'm teaching you how to do this. So that's a long background just to say, let's see if we have that. Something was wrong, a gripping podcast. I'm going to take out like unnecessary languages and intertwines they are unsettling realities of abusive relationships with, and I want to show that I've really even seen this or heard this before. It doesn't just give imagery, it has with real victims of domestic abuse describing in frightening detail the disasters of coercive control. See, like ChatGPT can give you like basic information, but it can't give you these specifics. You can ask it to put a quote in there, but it can't write it necessarily for the function of your essay with that quote. So it's, I don't take a stance on the technology itself, but I do want to show you what I'm looking for, and this is a good way to show you, even if you're using something like that, you're really just using it for its structural components. That the bare bones, you've got to really take that and turn it into something no matter what. And so I think this is probably the most important part of the class, is learning how to edit your own work. Okay, so it intertwines these realities. Yes, it does. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, I know that college writing isn't like this, so I'm going to take this out. And I'm going to, instead, I'm going to put something real there. Okay. What parallels? All of this is kind of not useful information here, right? If you look at it and read it, it's very, very vague, but we're going to make it better. So we're going to say, in disasters of coercive control and abuse. And it does it for a reason. It does it to enlighten others of these horrific real life situations who that could happen to anyone. Now I'm just kind of playing with that, but all right. So we don't need this, but let's just say we're going to use the storm brewing as a visual. And what is the storm? Well, the storm, in the case of the show, is not going to be the same storm as is in the case of what this chose to write about it. This is mostly just taking an essay on abuse and interweaving like bare mentions of the show so far. Okay, so you do see, though, that there is a great topic sentence here. I'm going to go ahead and show you that this is the comment that you'll get usually if you need a topic sentence in your essay body paragraphs. And okay, but I want to say, I don't want to use this. Like, that's not creative enough to me. Okay. Don't use ChatGPT to write your stuff because you're smarter than it. It's what I'm telling you. If you want a bland essay, yeah, maybe. Okay, so the storm brewing. Did that go? I don't know where it went. Now we want the name of one of the people, and I'm just gonna make it up. We're just gonna say, for now, Joe. Joe was an ordinary woman sitting in a college classroom, taking classes with her peers. What Joe didn't know is that her new boyfriend, her new girlfriend, her new boyfriend, this is more real to the episodes of that series, I believe. Trapped recent confession of his undying love for her after only 1 week is a sign of a abusive relationship. We're going to call that an abuse ship. So now I got an idea for my topic. Okay. Abuse ships. Okay. I don't know why the title is so big, but we don't want it that big. We want it regular size font, which I know I could have done more quickly, but I wasn't trying to be rushing through it because I wanted to be able to also show you guys some other things like how to center your title. You know, they don't make things easy for people who have to use ADA. I don't need you to read it to me. I just need you to let me do the thing. God. All right. Let's see. That didn't work. I don't know what center is as a command. Okay, now I do. Okay, and you could make that bigger, smaller, depending on what you want. It satisfies you to have it like that. I don't like mine to be in bold either. You don't need these headings, but they're good to have. You know, they're great as place markers for when you're writing your essay. Just remember to take them out at the end. Okay, and then, you know, according to, no, I'm going to go over and find a resource. This is going to be really easy. National Domestic Violence Hotline. I don't think that's what it is, but I'm not sure. That's not what I meant. Wow. I mean, come on. I've had colon cancer, so it's hilarious to me that, you know, it's about having gas. Everything is in my life colon related these days, thanks to stage 3 colon cancer in 2021. Anyway, okay. So on average, it takes 7 times to leave before staying for good. And there are 50 obstacles, 50 obstacles, right? So I could, even describing this website, describing the way it protects the victim, and all these things could be parts of my research that I bring in. Now, I'm not going to go throughout all of this and pull this in because I'm not writing an essay. I'm just showing you how to do it. But if I were showing you how to write an essay and I wanted to show you a quick way of getting a citation for something, I would point you to Zotero, which a lot of students on Rate My Professor did not like, apparently. Did not like having to use it, but we're not going to use it for anything other than just to take a look at it and see, you know, kind of what you think of it. And then if you don't want to use it, you don't have to. I don't know when it's really. I want Zotero bib, not that long one. There we go. That's what we want. Maybe that's why. Okay, so I'm just going to put the website address in, and I'm going to do this, and it's going to give me a citation. So if all of you have hopped on the ChatGPT bandwagon, which I hope you haven't, definitely hop on the Zotero bib bandwagon. It is the place to see what this looks like. Now, it's not going to put it in hanging indent for you, but you can come down here and you can copy it from the MLA. I don't know. Let's see. Let's see what happens. Okay. Let's see what happens. First of all, if I bring it back over to here and I create a works cited page. Now, if you want to know how I did that, I pressed command return on my Mac. Okay, this puts us in, oh, that's why that's centered on some students' work. Okay, perfect. So that leads us into work cited, because we're going to have more than one thing that we're citing. It's the work that is being cited. It's the work that you did, the research work, right? So the works are the research text that you engaged with. So I'm going to come to format. I'm going to do, let's see which one it is. Is it paragraph styles? Yeah, paragraph styles. And then I'm going to go, nope, that ain't that, I guess. Nope, not that. There might be another reason I can't see it. I know it looks like I'm trying to look under my phone, but because that's what's recording, but I'm not. Um, I'm actually trying to look under the transcript down at the bottom, the closed captioning. Okay, so format, indentation options, and then we want to go to hanging, right? And apply that. And we want to put this back to the left, and then it does, this is hanging. So the first line is here, every other line hangs from it. That's thus the name. All right, so I'm going back up here. And I'm only going to do about 5 more minutes of this. So we're going to go fast. I want to pull in examples, right? So I definitely want to have quotes. I definitely want to have examples in here, for instance, one of the places that this comes up is in, this person's relationship. And this is shown or stated to the audience when Mike tells a story about the day her husband Tony had a meltdown in Yosemite National Park in front of their children. What the audience learns from this example is that one of the signs of someone okay. One of the places this comes up is in, let's say Joe's relationship. And this is stated to the audience when Joe tells a story about the day her husband Tony had a meltdown in Yosemite National Park in front of their children. What the audience learns from this example is that one of the signs of being in this kind of relationship where control and power are dominant forces, like they are with Joe, is that there are few ends that the abuser won't go if they believe it will keep a person tied in their web. Okay, so I want specifics and I want you to interpret the specific examples that you've given, and I want you to elaborate on that. So why is this important? First of all, why is it important to your essay? Okay, my essay is to enlighten others of these horrific situations. So I want to come back to that. What am I telling people? What do I want them to see? What is, let's say the takeaway here is that an abuser doesn't just use tactics of violence to ensnare, like that word, their victims, right? We're keeping the spider web now going. You see that. So anytime that you can do that kind of thing in your writing is especially, it's beneficial to you to have that. That's why I would like you to have a theme and something that you're looking at, because you've got the topic and you've got the automatic example that you need to bridge these two things to really say, this is something that I can talk about. I don't think that if you've never written an essay this way, if this is a new thing to you, then you haven't had an opportunity to write an essay in a real life situation yet. And a real life situation, we get into the nitty gritty in terms of the essay. I've seen some people writing on some really interesting stuff in terms of perks of being a wallflower and white noise. And I want you to take it to a level that's interesting. It should be interesting to you. It should not be something that you're like, oh, let me go find the most bland research out there. Okay. So, like, what does that mean? Well, for instance, here's another instance of this. I want to talk about technology. Like, I doubt that's going to be in here. No, victims are left to pick up the pieces of their phones, right? Technology is also a conversation that isn't being given enough attention for our youth. We are so busy legislating their lives that a lot of teenagers today are losing the general life-based guidance that earlier generations would have insisted upon. You can't live, you is of course not there. So see, like, I do this all the time. The more you practice, the more it comes to you naturally. That's all it is. It's like math. Practice, practice, practice. It's like anything in life. You don't get good without practice. Fortnite, you know, Minecraft, anything. You were just babies, right? The first time that you guys played those things, you were just babies. Look how far you've come. Look what all that practice gets you. Okay, back to this. Okay, so essentially, as can be seen with young Joe, before going through the trauma of her abuse, she simply didn't go to college with street smarts, and she was going to learn the hard way. Okay, so, and now I'm back to the podcast again. Listen to the generic parts of this, like something was wrong poignantly captures the aftermath, drawing comparisons to the desolation following a natural disaster. The podcast doesn't shy away from discussing the long-term effects of abuse, emotional scarring, trust issues. See, I could use those things, but I've got to get rid of like a lot of this. Something was wrong captures. I like that word. Yeah. The aftermath of the natural disaster of not living in a world where the focus is primarily on real life things. Right? The long-term effects demonstrated by the podcast and through Joe's story show that failure to have this knowledge might mean a lifetime cyclical emotional scarring, trust issues, and the arduous journey towards healing. I might even put a source in here. Insert source. Okay, we know what that source is going to say, right? That source is going to say that abuse begets abuse. Okay, so we only have one citation here. You need at least 4, if not 5, including your source. So like 5 to 6 at the minimum. So I would, in this, I would also, I would do one of the episodes of the podcast. And so I might go to episode 1, something was wrong. Let's see what it says. Sarah. I knew I had the name wrong. It's okay. Joe is a stand-in for Sarah. Okay, keep her anonymity in our class. Okay, so I'm going to go to season 1. And I'm going to go to episode 1. That's not episode 1. Okay, and I'm going to take this, hopefully, let's see how that works. Let's see how that works in Zotero. Right, I didn't like that. Let's see, let's try this. Let's see if we got a different link with this one. Oh, it looks like we didn't get any link with that one. Let's try it one more time. Okay. Let's try this one then. Okay, so that one is called, let's do There Were No Red Flags. Let's try that one. Let me just try one more. It probably won't, but oh wait, here it says go to episode. Yeah, there we go. Now Now we can go over here to Zotero Bib and put this in, and boom, there we go. Now I would argue that I would want to do this a little differently, but you know what? We're not gonna be real picky. Like I would say, for instance, it's gonna be a number, so that goes first. Oh, well, that didn't work. Um, oh, it's giving me all the ones I've already done. My bad. Okay, and it's in hanging indent. So we've done exactly what we need to do there. All right. So we've got that part. Let's just read it through. Let's read it through, and I want you to see how much difference that you can tell between what I wrote and what ChatGPT wrote, because this is what happens when professors read your work. Okay. So not like no blame or anything. You can see I'm just trying to help you figure all this out here, right? But I want you to hear it and be able to see it for yourself so that you know why it is that, you're getting a bad grade on something that you thought sounded really good. Because it's not that ChatGPT writes things that don't sound good. It's just that they can't write a personal essay from your perspective for our course, or anybody's course for that matter. It's just a big topic, and I know it's very tempting. Believe me, I know. I can't imagine if I was a college student. Okay, abuse ships, right? You can see my creativity already right there, right out of the gate. A smart student's guide to love through the lens of the podcast. Something was wrong. I wish I had the original here, but I don't have it right in front of me. So, coercive control is not something that people talk about often in society, but it's important to have that kind of discussion. A really important discussion that needs to be had in society. Cut that down. That got wordy there. A really important part of that of the needed discussion are manipulation and other cruel practices that lead to human entrapment. Some of those practices, which are documented by many types of media, help people in the real world identify what are commonly referred to as situations of abuse as red flags. Something was wrong intertwines the unsettling realities of abusive relationships with real victims of domestic abuse, describing in frightening details the disasters of coercive control and abuse to enlighten others of these horrific real life situations that could happen to any one of you readers. Jo was an ordinary woman sitting in a college classroom taking classes with her peers. What Jo did not know is that her new boyfriend's recent confession of his undying love for her after only 1 week is a sign of an abuse ship. Okay. According to, we're going to use that quote. It takes 7 times to leave an abuser, and on average, and to stay gone for women or anyone in an abusive situation. Like the deceptive calm before the storm, the early signs of abuse are often subtle and easily overlooked. Something was wrong delves into this phase with a nuanced understanding. Does it make sense? Delves into this. Oh, this phase of the abuse. Okay. Looks at this phase of abuse. I don't think it has a nuanced understanding. I think it just is like she's abused. And okay, one of the places this comes up is in, Jo's relationship. And this is stated this is stated to the audience when Joe tells a story about the day her husband had a meltdown in Yosemite National Park in front of her children. What the audience learns from this example is that one of the signs of being in a kind of relationship where control and power are dominant forces, like they are with Joe, is that there are few ends the abuser won't go to if they believe it will keep a person tied up in their web. They will go to the extent of publicly humiliating themselves if it means you'll care for their wounds. Keeping a victim, right? I shouldn't be using you. Focused on healing the abuser rather than escaping the abuser. You know, is this compared to Stockholm Syndrome? I don't know. But you get the idea of that, right? Like, it's much more specific. The takeaway here is that the abuser doesn't just use tactics of violence to ensnare their victims. The podcast meticulously uncovers these early warning signs akin to the tension in the air before a tempest, right? You know, I didn't choose that word. Episodes filled with anecdotes and interviews reveal how victims, initially unaware, gradually sense the impending, gut-wrenching feeling that something is wrong. Of the gut-wrenching feeling that something is wrong. Okay. I would not put stuff like that in there. I would say it real, like for real. This period characterized by manipulation and control, okay, is being in the eye of a hurricane and living there and trying to walk at just the right speed to not get sucked up into the cyclone. Okay, now let's keep going. Now think about that paragraph and then listen to the rest of this essay. As the season progresses, the narrative intensifies, mirroring the sudden and overwhelming nature of disaster striking. The escalation of abuse in the podcast is portrayed with a raw intensity that parallels the chaos and destruction of a natural calamity. Victims' accounts of fear, betrayal, and confusion resonate with disarray typical of a disaster zone. Their stories, fraught with emotional upheaval, paint a vivid picture of lives turned upside down, much like the landscapes ravaged by unforeseen catastrophes, right? It's too much. But this is why it's not authentic, right? We do better. In the wake of abuse, just like with a disaster, victims are often left to pick up the pieces of their phones. Technology is also a conversation that isn't being given enough attention for youth in relation to abuse and entrapment. We are so busy legislating their lives that a lot of teenagers today are losing their general life-based guidance that earlier generations would have insisted upon. Essentially, as can be seen with the young Jo before going through the trauma of her abuse, she simply didn't go to college with street smarts, and she was going to learn them the hard way. Something Was Wrong captures the aftermath of a natural disaster of not living in the world where the focus is primarily on real life things. Okay, that's a little confusing. I'd have to revise it. Captures the aftermath of a disaster of living we don't want a double negative, of living in a world where real life is not many people's focus. The long-term effects demonstrated by the podcast. I just can't say the word podcast tonight. I don't know. It's like going to Taco China and ordering a cod taco. I always say a Todd Taco. It's just my brain. The long-term effects demonstrated by the podcast and through Joe's story show that failure to have this knowledge might mean a lifetime cyclical process of emotional scarring, trust issues, and the arduous journey toward healing. And then we're going to put that source in there, right? This phase is akin to the slow, often painful process of rebuilding after a disaster, where every step forward is triumph against the odds. I actually really like that one. That's the one sentence that ChatGPT wrote that I actually like so far in this essay. So whatever paper they stole that one from did a good job. You know, that's what it is, right? It's basically just stealing other people's stuff and giving us all access to it. Through its compelling narrative, Something Was Wrong effectively uses language and imagery of disasters. No, that's not what our paper is about. Yes, it offers a unique lens through which to view these things, but that's not what my essay is about. Yes. Okay, here we go. A poignant reminder. Now remember, that word already came up, so we're not going to use that a second time there. Something was wrong. I truly believe that the podcast and podcast episodes are the way to do it this way. Through its compelling narrative, Something Was Wrong reminds listeners that the destructive power of abuse and the resilience of those who survive it is often as close as a student sitting next to you in class, a student sitting next to you in class and going home to this nightmare. Okay? All right. So remember, we're going to take this kind of stuff out. This does not go in here. You're going to make sure that your conclusion answers the questions, so what and who cares? We're going to indent these paragraphs. We don't use block in college. Double space everything. Okay. And so this is basically my very long lecture for you if you've missed a good component of this course in regards to how to look at and analyze and work on your final essay and what it should really look like. I'm going to go ahead and use this video as a hybrid, even though I really started it for 1102, because it is very similar to what I'm asking 1101 students to do in relation to a true crime research project. Even though, because I didn't use real examples from the show, but those are my comp babies too. And so they need sometimes a little bit more of a visual guidance than you sophomores do in your old age and expertise. So let's see if there's anything else that I'm missing here. Okay, we've talked about topic sentences. Yeah, we haven't really talked about analysis, but we have touched upon how we want to bring this back to the thesis statement. Okay, so if my thesis statement again is to enlighten the disasters, the frightening details of coercive control. See, I like to take this down here and let's go with this awful paragraph that doesn't have any kind of real specific to it. Right. So I'm going to come back to that. Ravaged, much like landscapes, ravaged by unforeseen catastrophes. People always speak about the way their lives flash before their eyes in a near death experience. And let's see, the podcast invites listeners to walk in the shoes of the character Joe, of the person Joe, really Sarah, but we're going to say Joe for consistency, and understand that while that she survived, but not without substantial harm to her life and her capacity to live in and advocate for herself in living. Too many people, whether young or old, find themselves in such a situation. We don't, society doesn't pay mind to the many women who lose years of their lives escaping domineering spaces with little autonomy or happiness. Okay. God, I got really sad there. Not that this is not going to be a sad topic. I've been through domestic abuse, so it is something that isn't talked about very often, and I'm comfortable talking about it, but I don't mean to I'm definitely not making light of it. Okay, this is the kind of thing that we're talking about in terms of analysis, right? This is, let me take this situation and show the reader, oh, that looks awful. Show the reader, show my reader what to really make of it. Now remember, document your sources in your paper. They need to have works cited and in-text citations. I've also provided you with information on how to go about that. As you can see, we've taken a very basic essay from ChatGPT, and I've only, we've spent an hour and a half on it, right? And I know that I'm your professor and everything, but I've spent an hour and a half simply adding these key characteristics of an essay into my essay, even if it's not my essay, right? But you want it to be your essay. We all need an essay. You all need an essay for the final project. Um, and I hope that you are like happy that you got your drafts back and have this time to work on them. I hope you're not like, God, how could she? I thought I was done with this class and but either way, you could be done with this class if you're passing and you're happy with the grade that you got. Or you will have possibly sat down to walk through this kind of process with me in this 90-minute video to help yourself really learn what you need to do for your own final paper, if you want to pass it. So hopefully, if you're struggling, if this is, you're coming back from Thanksgiving break and you're like, how am I going to get this done? This is how you get this done. If you have any questions, reach out to me. I'm happy to talk with you. Um, and I just wish you all the best in your classes and your lives, as we head towards final exams. So thanks for hanging in here. If you made it in here at all and made it this far, and let me know if you have any questions about anything that I've gone over. Good night. Still recording. It's so hard to say goodbye. All right. Good night, everyone.